Welcome everyone to Feros Care's Employment Summit, a Q&A panel to discuss young people with disability in employment. I'm Chantelle, I'm your host today. I'm a writer and I've been writing on my blog for 15 years on topics around family, travel, recipes, as well as parenting a child with additional needs. The topic we're discussing today is particularly of interest to me as my daughter has just turned 15 and we're looking at her entering the workforce, and I can already see the barriers to her being employed and the challenges that we'll face. I'm keen to explore this with everyone on the panel and in the audience so we can all gain insights on young people with disability in employment. To start off our session today, I'd like to introduce Victor Slocky to do our Welcome to Country.
Jingri Walla Bogumbe, Bunjalung for g'day or good afternoon, and thank you. The last time we did this, you were in a movie theatre with better seats. But this is Bunjalung Yargan, Bunjalung Country, and it is our honour to welcome you here. And first of all, we pay our respects to our elders, both past and present. They have set really good pathways for us to follow. And we acknowledge all the tribal groups in this area. You may have heard some of them. There's the Minjinbal, the Nungdawal, the Gujinbara, the Buninbar, the Mullinjali, Kumbameri, Pepiop and Yugambeh country. And these tribes have travelled across this country since the first sunrise, and they derive their livelihood from the land, the streams, the rivers, the oceans and the air of this beautiful country. Just a bit of Bunjalung language, and I'll tell you what it means. Bunjalung Yargan, Nalina Yargan, Naligarma Malayangan, Wamajangma Malagungu Galayangan. It means Bunjalung country. We belong to this country and we care about this country here. And we don't do no wrong around here in this country. We live in this valley under the shadow of the majestic Wollumben. Some of you know it as Mount Warning. This valley is a green paradise. And the tribes, not only these tribes, but visiting tribes always see Wollumben as a sacred site. And when we talk about sacred sites, it's our connection to land, and that is important to us because when we talk about land or sacred sites, we talk about it as a person as well as a place. So, Nalina Yargan, we belong to this country. You, Nalina Yargan, belong to this country too. For this is your culture, and these are your stories also to share. So, welcome to Bunjalung Country. Always was and always will be Bunjalung Country. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor and Gary. And now I'm going to hand over to Tanya Sim from Feros Care to talk about Fearless Films.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya. I'm the creative marketing lead at Feros and also a film producer for a series of films that Feros has produced over the last 5 years called Fearless Films. Each year we unleash a new series of the films and tackle a subject around breaking stereotypes and presenting a series that is thought-provoking, real authentic stories of people that we've met along our journey, that have stories that are there to challenge and also to create conversations around what it is to live with a disability or to be ageing as a senior. 6 months ago, we just launched season 4. In season 4 of Fearless Films, what we made the series about was people with disability carving careers. And we showcased in this series 6 exceptional stories. And I would encourage you to go to the Feros Care website to see the whole series. Today we're going to give you a sneak peek of 1 or 2 of them. And what they are, they're stories about people that have challenged the narrative around what it is to employ somebody with a disability and the benefits that they have brought to the workplace. We're trying to normalise conversations around inclusive workplaces. So we've covered some of the stories of people that have been self-starters, entrepreneurs, or that have been invited into a workplace where they've basically started their career. The films are fantastic. What made this project even more exciting is that we worked with an inclusive filmmaking team. That means that we were working with people with disability behind the camera, filming stories of people with disability in front of the camera. We were very fortunate to work with Julian, who is my film director here, and with us today to capture some highlights of today. And we partnered with a school in Sydney called Bus Stop Films. Their head office is in Sydney, but they have offices in student campuses or student programs in other states. And it gives people with students with disability the opportunity to explore film as their career. And today we're really lucky because I've got Lewis up the back, Lewis Smith. In the first film we're going to show you today, it's about a young guy called Elijah. Elijah is one of the participants in Canberra that Ferros supports. His story is magnificent, and if you can, follow him on social media if you like what you see today, because this guy is going to go places. So without further ado, we'll play Elijah's fearless film. Thank you.
My name is Elijah Ranch. I am 21 years old and I am a motivational speaker. What I love about doing sport is getting out there and feel that sense of being alive.
We just used to call him Forrest because he ran. He absolutely just loved any type of sport. He was training for running 5 days a week, as well as basketball and jiu-jitsu, and then wanted to chuck tennis in there as well. And we're just like, mate, you gotta pull back.
In November 2015, I went skydiving.
As soon as you see them and they're actually coming down, you have this sense of relief of, okay, all is good. The chute opened fine. Elijah and I were calling to each other, and then out of the blue, just this gust of wind came and it got trapped in the parachute and brought them down.
We didn't land like normal people land when skydiving.
When they called for an ambulance and then they called for a chopper, that's when you knew it was really bad.
Tony was the skydiving instructor. He positioned himself to take all the impact so that I had a chance of surviving.
We were told that our boy was really, really unwell, and that was sort of the extent. They tried to slowly pull him out of the coma, but he wasn't responding very well. The accident was at the end of November. He really just started to wake up in about April. Our houses had to be modified. Our careers obviously were changed a bit as well, or just everything is different, but it's our new normal.
A week after the accident, my dad, in his emotional state, decided that he would run every day until I am back walking.
Jose did a lot of whispering into his ear. He'd always tell him the basketball scores as well. And prior to the accident, Elijah challenged himself to run every day for a year. Jose decided that he would run every day until Elijah was walking. And he has continued to do so.
Just quietly, I didn't think he thought it would be this long. He still hates running. When I came out of the coma, I had to relearn how to do everything again. Rehab is just like a big game of chess. I always think that there's stuff to improve. It's a game that will take the rest of my life.
His physio said, you know what, I think Elijah's ready to start doing something else, like maybe Pilates or yoga, and I kind of went, whoa, hang about. If he's ready to do that, what do you think about BJJ? It's good for Elijah because a lot of the stuff is done on the ground, and for someone who's, you know, learning how to re-walk again, it's perfect.
I love training with my dad on the mat because it gives me an opportunity to choke him out and make him suffer.
This is a kid in a wheelchair, yet he's still managing to beat me up, so to speak.
One night we were training and I was just going to town on my dad. The next morning he woke up and he had bruises all over his chest area.
Yeah, he holds his own.
I remember when he first came in, he was in his wheelchair with the back hunched over, to now he's standing up straighter than ever. walking up by himself without any assistance. So I wanted to push him in the city to surf so he knew what it would be like to cross the line again.
We have made a commitment to run this city to surf each year together.
So the NDIA funded him, which is part of occupational therapy, just finding and keeping a job. We were referred to a company called the Rehabilitation Specialists.
2 years ago, we employed Elijah as our happiness ambassador and social media coordinator. Elijah was actually a client of ours, and every time he came in, he just lifted the spirits of the team. As the social media coordinator, I guess one of the challenges always in that space is having people in the team voluntarily want to be on social media, and Elijah just has this energy about him that makes people want to take part in these activities.
That was just, Elijah just being Elijah and them creating a job for him.
He was just the perfect fit for our workplace.
I think the happiness that he brings just seems to rub off on everyone else, and everyone seems to have a good day once they've had engagement with Elijah.
In my free time, I like to do motivational speaking. It does make me feel very proud of myself because I can see that what I'm saying is getting through to people and that I'm leaving an impression on them.
He's been invited on a number of occasions to speak in front of crowds, and I guess after the first couple he kind of realised he liked it, gave him a sense of purpose. He felt proud that he was able to help people out.
I'm a young man with a severe traumatic brain injury, and I would like to tell you about how I got to where I am.
My goal every time I go out onto the stage is to make an impact on at least one person in the crowd as a young man that has survived a horrific skydiving accident and he's come out better on the other side.
Family and I would be today.
His speech on the night had everything. He was articulate, he had a great sense of humour, but he also shared his raw story. He received a standing ovation at the end, and he is literally one of the best speakers we've ever had at one of our functions.
Elijah is an amazing motivational speaker. He's very passionate about what he speaks about. He's very open about his background and what he's been through, and he's very welcoming of other people.
It was kind of another way of saying thanks to all the nurses that have helped and progressed me to where I am today. Nurses play an important role in my recovery.
We chose Elijah this year because we wanted someone with lived experience and someone who could come and speak about how the nurses have impacted their lives and how nurses have truly made a difference in their life.
I think that everyone needs to be given a go. It's challenging, but it's so rewarding when you help people.
It's not about the disability, but it's about having a role, having your goals, having the ownership of what you're doing day to day and being supported to achieve that.
I say that we are extremely lucky for a hideously unlucky situation. The doctors hadn't expected him to survive those first 72 hours. He got his Year 12 certificate, he's now got a job, he's pursuing motivational speaking. There's nothing that he can't do.
Seeing everything he's done from the day I met him to now, it just makes me feel good as a personal trainer and as a mate to see those improvements.
Tony would be extremely proud of the man that I am aiming to become. I work every day and refuse to give up because I know that he gave me that fighting chance.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, Elijah crossing that line.
I encourage you all to look at the other Fearless films because they will move you and they will change you and they will alter the way you look at life. So definitely head to Feros Care and look at the other Fearless films. So let's talk about why we're here today. Today we're going to chat about young people living with a disability, both visible and invisible, in employment. Only 9% of workplaces across Australia employ someone with a disability. Even though Australia is experiencing record lows in unemployment, the barriers people with disability face have remained unchanged in the past 30 years. We're just not making any ground in this area. While people with disability make up more than 20% of the Australian population, they still don't experience equal access to meaningful employment. Many of the barriers centre around unconscious bias and fears about the value and capacity of people with disability in the workforce. But it's not all bad news. Today we brought together a range of people to shine some light on the value of people with disability in the workforce. The support's available for both people with disability and employers to create an inclusive and accessible community. So let's say hello to our panellists. Let me first introduce Tyler. Tyler is a Year 12 student at the Busy School and lives with autism. He's representing a hugely important group of people in this conversation. Young people with disability looking to enter the workforce. Do you want to come up, Tyler? And we also have Marika Wilcombe, Careers Pathway Officer, also at the Busy School. Marika supports students to understand their unique strengths, likes and preferences to help them find a career that is perfect for them post-school. Come on up. Please also welcome Stephanie Agnew, Senior Consultant at Get Skilled Access. Get Skilled Access is an organisation founded by Dylan Orcott that's dedicated to creating a new generation of disability inclusion that's accessible to all. Stephanie's lived experience of disability and her previous careers in real estate and hospitality means she is well placed to provide tangible, sustainable advice to industry to improve the inclusion experience for people with disability. Welcome, Stephanie. We also have Scott Hickey, owner-operator of the Kingscliff Pool Shop. Scott wants to expand his business and is keen to create a welcoming, inclusive and diverse workspace. Thanks for coming, Scott, and we're sure you'll come away with some great insights on how to do that. The next panel member I'd like to welcome is Kerry Barnes, General Manager, Ethical Standards and Enterprise Risk at Surf Life Saving Queensland. Surf Life Saving Queensland is a welcoming and inclusive employer, and we're keen to hear about what they do in their organisation to be inclusive. And our last panel member this afternoon is Peter Illich, Lead Business Engagement Consultant at Busy Ability, a disability employment service provider. He'll be talking about what disability employment service providers can do to support people with disability to find and maintain meaningful employment. Thank you everyone for being here. So let's get started. I thought I'd go to you first, Tyler. So as a soon-to-be school leaver, do you feel comfortable disclosing your disability to a potential employer?
Yep. Yes.
Have you applied for part-time or casual jobs while at high school?
Yeah, I worked at Macca's for almost 4 months, I think. So that was all right.
Yeah.
Not the best first job, it was all right. At least I got money.
You got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
And did you disclose that you have autism at the interview stage?
No, I don't think so.
And did it come up in the process at all? Like, that did you want to explain to them that you...
Not at all, no.
No, so it didn't matter?
Nah.
And then Peter, so I'll go to you if that's okay. What's the best way to help someone if they're going to employment with a disability? How to disclose and at what stage and what does that look like?
Disclosure. I'd love to find another term that we can use because for me disclosure is it's like you're telling a secret.
Yes, yeah.
And it shouldn't be a secret.
Yep.
So we strongly encourage our customers to share their health barriers. Part of the reason for that is there's a lot of employers that are aware and want to support people that might have a disability in the workplace, and by being aware, they can put appropriate structures in place to support them. Sometimes it might be a case that you apply for a job and you've got to complete an application form and you have to fill in if you have any medical conditions, and if you think that it's going to create some stigma by ticking a box, so you decline from ticking that box, and you come along, have the interview with the employer. There might be a medical screening that might be undertaken. That could include a urine sample for a drug and alcohol test. So if you're taking medication, say for a mental health condition, that will show up, and they'll stop you right there, because not because you've got a mental health condition, but because you weren't open in your disclosure of your condition. It's a difficult one for people because they feel that it will go against them, but we strongly encourage that people do share their medical conditions.
Yeah. I recently had an experience where I was helping my daughter apply for a job with a big company, and so they asked that question, and you kind of get to that point where you think, do I or don't I? But now that really makes sense, because you don't want to get down the path and have not shared that information and it become an issue that they want to know about. So I understand it now, yeah.
Yep.
And let's talk about employers. So we'll go to Kerry. I know that Surf Life Saving Queensland has worked hard to be an inclusive employer. I'd love to know what it does it mean to be inclusive and how much effort has been involved in becoming inclusive, and what changes did you implement? Do you have some stories to share?
Oh wow, that's a lot of questions.
Yeah, it is.
So Surf Life Saving Queensland, apart from employing about 550 professional staff, we have 36,000 volunteers that we also consider to be our employees, and certainly legislatively they are. What we've been working on a lot, and it's big change management for us in Surf Life Saving. We're a very old organisation, and at times with a lot of old ideas. So what we're doing is implementing a number of strategies throughout our clubs around inclusivity, around certainly the environment we work in, the clubhouses, offering different levels of training and courses for our volunteers to be able to participate in, and certainly just getting a message out there around the need to have a more inclusive workforce, which again for us is to make sure that futuristically we can sustain our volunteer workforce. And in the paid side, it's a standard practice for us that if you're skilled in any way, regardless of any barrier, you're part of our workforce. It's of no relevance to us if there is a disability, as long as you can do your job and you're welcome. That's how we look at it.
And is that something that happens at the interview stage? Like, are you asking that question?
Yeah, so during the screening process in the interviews, certainly when people put in for the job, and then during the screening process, there are specific questions asked by our HR team. Specifically to some of our roles, if there are some disabilities, people genuinely, so like for example our helicopter pilots, there's some very strict rules around what they can and can't do, and their medical viability. Certainly we've just had one who fell off his scooter, so he wasn't allowed in the helicopter for months, and then he's got a specialist doctor that has to clear him. So there's obviously some of our operational roles, but for all the other roles, no, the questions are asked straight up.
Yep.
And it doesn't, for me, it doesn't pose any issues in my interview process, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you for being the change. It's great to hear. Stephanie, we might go to you from Get Skilled Access. What barriers does a business encounter to build an inclusive and diverse culture in the workplace? And how can they be overcome?
So I think the biggest barrier that we see in our consulting is misconceptions, unconscious bias around employing people with disability. And that comes into the inclusive culture. So for organisations, if they can get education around some of those thoughts, traditionally disability has been seen through the medical model of disability, which is that people with disability need to be fixed or healed to fully participate in society. But we know that that's not true. So we need to change some of those beliefs and bust some of those myths around that it's expensive to hire somebody with disability, or people with disability won't fit in, or they won't be able to do the job. So by employers providing that education that will really, really help to change those mindsets and create those inclusive cultures. We know that employing people with disability creates a better morale in the workplace, lots of different things, customer loyalty, all of those sorts of things. So if we can create that inclusive culture and getting leadership on board, so change needs to come from the top down. So really getting the leaders on board, the execs to create that change and push it down through education, through role modelling, through leading inclusively. So leading with empathy and curiosity is a really big piece.
And then back to you, Kerry. As an employer, we kind of touched on this, but how do you respond when someone flags that they have a disability? Do you get curious, I guess, and want to know more and how that you can support them?
Myself personally, yeah, I'm a very curious person, and I'm a question asker all of the time about anything. I'm a bit annoying actually to people, I'm sure. So yeah, I think again, depending on the section of Surf Life Saving Queensland, we're a very big organisation, so. Questions are asked specifically because of some of our operations, especially in the paid side, and then. Yeah, so I don't think that we've actually just done a session with all of our senior leaders with Leaders for Good around inclusivity and the need for that engagement and not to be scared to ask questions if you need to. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers for us is that, and certainly our membership and staff have wanted to learn more and more about what questions can be asked and what they want to be able to know and what we can and can't know. And that's a big thing for our staff that we're teaching at the moment.
Yeah, there's that fear of getting it wrong, isn't it, and offending someone. But I think if you're curious and you're going about it the right way, it's okay to ask those questions and we will get it wrong sometimes, but at least we're moving forward instead of going backwards.
Yeah, I think we've found in some of the learnings too and in some of the groups that we've spoken with is that ask the question, don't just make an assumption, and that's what we're really aiming for. And I think for me, the question asking and the curiosity just leads to better understanding. I don't mind if people ask me questions about anything ever, I'll tell you anything. So, and I hope that can be reciprocated in other ways as well.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You're an employer wanting to be inclusive, and you might have heard some of the conversations today, and I'm just interested to know, have you learnt anything today and what you could implement, and how do you feel about hiring someone with a disability now?
What have I learnt? A fair bit. But for me, I wouldn't have a problem with somebody with disabilities, but in a small business, ours is really small. I've only got 5 employees, so everybody has to be able to function. But if I had the support that could help somebody else with the disability, then I'd be more than happy to give someone a go. It's not a problem.
I think it was great speaking to you earlier today about what it would look like to employ someone and just the education that would have to come with it. So I think like you're curious, but then also feeding that through your team and just having this compassion and empathy. And
I think training the rest of the team is the hard part.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of dinosaurs out there. Sorry, there is. And the disability that the person would have also would make a slight difference because a lot of our work is physical, but there's a lot of different disabilities, so what I can do could cover a lot of different people.
I think it's a great starting point that you're open to it and that anything is possible, and I'm really interested to see where you are at in a year's time or what it looks like in your workplace. Thanks. Peter, we'll go to you from Busy Ability. What services are available for young people with disability to help find them meaningful employment?
Okay, so depending on the age really, when you say young people, so for someone like Tyler, for example, just leaving school, maybe if he had an NDIS plan, there could be support through that. Maybe if they were able to get school leaver employment support into their plan, that could be something that could be utilised. So that's quite intensive support, around about 8 hours a week. And that's about building capacity for work, so like giving them life skills, so about maybe just budgeting and how to prepare yourself for work. That might just be a little bit more intense support there. There's also Disability Employment Services, which I'm part of. So for Des, for example, it sounds a little bit facetious, but sometimes I say to people, it depends if you're born on the first Tuesday of the month with an R in it as to whether or not you're eligible for this. Because if you're born on the second Wednesday of the month, you're not eligible for that. So the first thing really is just to have conversations with the provider, get the information. You might have some young people that might be with a workforce provider, for example, so they've never provided any, so they're receiving a Centrelink payment, but they've never provided any evidence to Centrelink that they might have a medical condition. Yep. And so that might not be getting taken into account. Yeah. So it might be just a case of letting them know that they, you know, if they can get some verification of that medical evidence, they can then be referred to a DES provider. So that DES provider is specialised in supporting people gain employment in the open workplace for people that have health conditions. And when I say open workplace, there are other avenues as well for a young person, depending on the barriers, and they're with what's called an ADE, Australian Disability Enterprise, and that they would be on a supported wage, so they would be assessed as to what their capacity would be, and then they would be paid accordingly. But a DES provider is only working towards finding open employment for somebody, so they get paid exactly the same as anybody else doing exactly the same job.
Right. And is there something, and this might be off topic, but my mum works at Woolies, and I know that an occupational therapist will sometimes come into the workplace for someone that does have additional needs or has a disability. Is that something that you see often as well, that will help them do their job better, like a service provider coming into the workplace to help them do their job?
There is on-the-job support that can be provided as well, depending on what the person's barriers are and what their support needs are, really. Yeah. And especially in the beginning, you know, sometimes we would, and some people don't want you in the workplace as well. They say, no, it's okay, I can handle this, but we still keep contact. Yeah. You know, just check in on the phone at lunchtime or something like that, just so that they've got that person to feed back to. But there is that opportunity to have that on-the-job support as well.
I guess it's their first go at independence too, like going from school to that, so they do want to have this go at it by themselves and see how they go. But
for sure,
it's nice to know that that support's there as well.
And people, you know, they might feel uncomfortable having someone there with them, and what are the other people in the workplace going to think of that? So
drawing attention to them. Marika, we'll go to you from the busy school. Do your students have access to these sort of services that help them get into the workplace?
Yeah, so we provide the information for families to access those. So we can't make a student choose to do that, but we provide the information so they can. And the Busy Ability is part of the Busy School group. So our students have access to Busy Health, Busy Ability, employment services. Our students have access to a variety of services when they come to our school.
I remember being in high school and trying to choose a career. So with my daughter, I feel like that's even more challenging, trying to think. Like, I remember getting handed that book in year 12 and they go like, pick a career. And I was like, what? I'm like, I'm 17, how can I pick this? So even with someone with additional needs, it feels so much more challenging. So I love that you do that for your job and you kind of figure out what would work best for people after school. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear what kind of jobs people are going into.
So the Busy School only started at Coolangatta last year, so we're like a year old. So Tyler will be the first cohort moving into post-school. But basically our goal is to provide an education for our students and then have a career pathway, so when they leave school they're already set up, so they don't enter the wild world and they don't have anything set up for them. They're actually good to go when they leave. So Tyler and I are working on what his next steps are for when he leaves school, so when he leaves school that he's not sitting there with nothing to do.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And then back to you, what barriers have you overcome with liaising with prospective employers for school-based traineeships?
I think there's a lot of fear around, so I try and provide a lot of education and information to employers around what hiring a person with a disability is like. So providing information to services available. We actually provide a lot of support ourselves as a school. working on the strengths with the young person of what they can offer to a prospective employer, and being there to have those conversations. So I try and build good relationships with employers, so then I know the employer and I know the young person, so then when the match happens, it's a good match, and that provides the opportunity for, you know, as little to go wrong, I guess, for the young person.
Yeah. I feel like it's so easy to think that there's about the hard stuff with employing someone with a disability, but when I think of my daughter and other people with additional needs or disabilities, like there's so much great stuff that they can take into a role. So I think just having those conversations and talking about it and letting people know they've got so much to offer.
Yeah, and the services are available for them to gain information and things like that. But as far as, because we are a border school, that is a big issue for us. So we service students from New South Wales and we service students from Queensland, and the funding model across both is actually very, very different. The government's actually cut a lot of funding for all people in regards to traineeships and apprenticeships, which has made it a little bit more challenging, I guess, to service people across the board nationally. So, but yeah, I think the traineeship model is a lot. In Queensland, it's been promoted a lot more in Queensland than New South Wales. So I think it's just education around employers, around what that looks like, is definitely something that we need more of.
Yeah, having those conversations.
Yeah.
And so then, Tyler, after you've heard us all talk about working in the workforce with a disability, how are you feeling about joining after you finish school? And is there any services that you'll be looking to take up?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. There's not like what I want to do when I finish.
Yeah.
Well, when I was 12, I started this company. There was this company called Tribes Adventure Group, and it just started, and it was basically this one guy that was making this company that was trying to get people with disabilities out of their house, kind of a thing. Like, you can go play netball, you can go play basketball, you can go on these amazing walks, river walks and stuff. It was trying to get people with disabilities out of the house, with no PS4s, no whatever. And I've been with Tribes from the start. Now I'm hoping to work with them now as an employee, so I can, take kids with disabilities that might have the same as me, or, different types of disabilities. So, yeah, it'll be good.
That sounds exciting, and sounds like you're passionate about it too. So we'll just go to the audience now if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask anyone on the panel. There's lots of great brains up here, so feel free to ask away.
I'm going to try and sneak in 2 questions if I can. My name's Megan, and I have sort of one question that's probably more so directed at Steph, and a little bit with sort of what Tyler was saying in the first question. Is there certain things that you look for, Steph, like certain green flags or things that you hear in that make you know that a company is inclusive? I guess in the way that if you're wanting to look at employment with a specific company, are there things that you're kind of looking for to know in advance that they are inclusive and that they're going to be supportive and that you're comfortable disclosing to them?
Yeah, if I put my non-consultant hat on, and what I look for, and I'm definitely not looking for another job, no one tell Dylan that I am, please. I look for signs and symbols, so whether that's on the website or the way that the job ad's written, and that's sort of around talking about inclusion. So sometimes people don't talk about it on their websites or in their job ads, and the way that maybe an inclusion statement is written. However, if it's not there, that doesn't mean that the organisation is not inclusive. So completely understand that. Putting my consultant hat on when I do recruitment reviews, I definitely look for those sorts of things. But I wouldn't want that to stop someone with disability applying for a role. So if, for instance, your inclusion statement is at the bottom of the ad, you could move it up to the top of the ad, because that's a sign and symbol of inclusion. It's the first thing that your potential candidate is reading. It doesn't feel tokenistic sometimes when it's at the bottom of an ad. It might feel a little bit tokenistic. It's an add-on. But if you talk about that, also we were talking around disclosing disability earlier. We often say to our clients, if you put a section in there around reasonable adjustments and why you're asking that question, so you please let us know if you require any reasonable adjustments, because we want to make sure that we can best support you. So by adding that little bit around best supporting you, it can remove some of the fear for a candidate with disability around letting you know that they have some reasonable adjustments, and then you can take it from there and asking those questions. So being curious, often the person with disability knows best around what they need. So for me, my reasonable adjustments are that something just needs to be accessible with a screen reader. I can do my job, my screen reader's built in, so I don't cost my business any extra. But I would say that my reasonable adjustment would just be to have everything in digital format.
Okay, thank you. Can I squeeze a second one in? My daughter was going to come today, and her partner run a couple of, won't mind me saying, the G3 donut shops in Brisbane. And it's something that she's been passionate about because of her own struggles with anxiety and things like that, that she would love to go out and be able to employ and give other people the opportunities just to even get some basic skills. But they kind of don't know where to start as an employer. They're in the situation where they've got hot cookers and things like that, so there's safety concerns, and they're kind of prepared to give anyone a go, but they need to know that they're supported, I guess, as well, to know that this person is going to be able to do these things. And I guess that in some ways they've put it into the too hard basket because they weren't sure, where do we go? Where do we even begin to find out? So she was hoping that there might be a little bit of advice on that one.
Sure, I'll take them. Sorry, what was your name?
Megan.
Hi, Megan, thanks. Well, as a DES provider, and I know Crystal's here also from another DES provider, from ETC. Disability Employment Services is one avenue to go to. If you were to Google, how do I employ someone with a disability, there'll be a multitude of information come up. And it's almost as if every week there's another service that's available. There's sites, Job Access is a great one. That's a federal site to go to. It gives a lot of information for employers. But just contact a DES provider, Disability Employment Service provider in the area, and they'll be able to give the information, go in, have a look at the workplace, maybe have a bit of a scout around, see what the jobs entail, what adjustments might need to be made within the workplace depending on the nature of the job, and if they've got someone in mind for that job, you know, do we need to make any modifications? I know you were saying about your web browser, you know, the Zoom for your screens. There's a lot more than just that. There can be actual physical adjustments to a workplace. So somebody with a wheelchair, for example, we assisted their employer. They didn't need to widen doorways or anything like that, or even to get to the toilets, but the first door that they would go to get into the building was a really heavy-duty swing door, like twin doors, which you just couldn't open from a wheelchair. So we were actually able to have adjustments made so that it became an automatic door. They just had, so everyone got the benefit of that, really. But there's workplace mods that are available. There's education available for employers. And there's support once somebody starts in the workplace as well. So there is a lot of support out there for employers, and it is a minefield as far as where do you go to find that information, but I would recommend they start with a DES provider.
Thank you very much for that. Brilliant. Yep, no, go for it. Go for it.
I'll be really, really quick. I just wanted to say as well, adjustments aren't always physical. So they may be around flexible working hours or sensory or sound or lights. So sometimes they might not be always physical, and that's something that we can think about as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that going to your local school in the area, definitely there's careers people as well. Any of the busy schools, we'll be happy to help you out. But yeah, if you're looking at younger people, like with disabilities as well, definitely contacting your local school, and they'll actually help you connect to all these people as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, my name is Tomoko, and I just have a question for Tyler. My question is, as a young person potentially applying for a job, what kind of things would you want your prospective employer to know about you?
Well, I think it's different for everybody that has a disability. It also depends on what type. Obviously, there's high and low, but I don't necessarily like people knowing I have a disability. It's just, what I feel. Everybody's different. That's just my opinion. I guess in another way, hopefully, I'll be able to get the job soon. But once I do, I think it'll be good. It will, like I said, a lot of different people have things. I feel like it's good for a lot of employers to know whoever, that has a disability. Like I have ADHD and autism, so for me, I don't really mind. I'm that kind of person that, whatever goes, if they want to know, they want to know, whatever. Just ask the question.
Awesome, thank you.
Anyone else with another question?
Hello. Sorry, I've forgotten your name, the gentleman from the pool shop. Scott. Hi, Scott. I'm just curious what prompted you to want to come to this to look at hiring somebody with a disability. Yeah, I think it's great, and I'd just like to know more about what prompted you to want to look into hiring a person with a disability.
I guess in our home life, without going too far into it, we deal with this sort of stuff at home. For me, disability, I probably was a dinosaur. I said dinosaur before, I probably was. And I've got 3 kids, 22, 21, 16. I've probably learnt more off them in the last 3 years about things like disabilities and acceptance than I've learnt in my previous 51 years. Okay, so my mind is quite open to all of what's going on here. Okay, I'm not necessarily looking to employ somebody right now, but I am accepting of the possibility of doing it. I think, Dylan, you said something before that you probably wouldn't want to tell people, but from my point of view as an employer, I'd probably want to know what I'm dealing with, because if that person's willing to give you the interview, then they're willing to give you a go. So it probably helps them to know what you are dealing with, because disabilities aren't always visible. I suppose the visible ones are the easier ones to deal with I suppose, but the ones that you can't see, they're probably the harder ones to deal with. But yeah, I'm accepting of giving anyone a go. Like I said, I've learned a hell of a lot. And
Yeah, thank you. Thank
that
you.
answer your questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll just add to that as well, like with my daughter, and I'm sorry to keep talking about my daughter, but I understand she wouldn't want anyone to know, but as her mum, it would be so much easier if they could know beforehand. Like, she has trouble reading and comprehending information, and she also has really bad anxiety, so it would be challenging for them they'd come up with a challenge later on with her, but if they knew beforehand, maybe they could workshop it a little bit. But it would also be a fear that you'd be like, oh, this is actually too hard, we won't employ you. But I would love for her to have the confidence to own it and speak up and see where it landed.
Yeah. I guess too, it's curious because I'm a mum with a son with a disability. So my son's actually really proud about his disability and talks quite open about it. And I think sometimes I think we need to be asking, why do our young people or anyone with a disability, why do they have fear, and where is that coming from, and what can we do to actually support that? So, I think that's probably the biggest thing that we need to work on for everybody, because, there is there is prejudice out there. We know that, whether you've got a disability or not. And disability can be depression, it can be anxiety, it could be physical, it could be anything. So when I work with the young people at my school, I try and encourage them to disclose their disability and be proud of it and look at the strengths that they do have. But I also understand if they don't want to. But yeah, I think it's something that we need to look at the opposites of the strengths, of your disability, so we can share that with the employer and helping them to be able to share the great things about them as well.
She's actually really proud of her diagnosis. It's like one of the first things she'll tell anybody. But I think the intricacies of the challenges that she faces, I think that's what she'd be struggling to share. But she would tell you straight away what her diagnosis is, and I'm like, she thinks that defines her, but she's really proud of it. So it's nice that you say that, because she is really proud of who she is, and yeah. Anyone else with any questions?
Yeah, hi, my name's Amanda. I can answer that question. It's the fear of being judged. My daughter, she has her own issues as well, and that's what the fear is, of being judged. So I'm also a DES provider, and I work with young children. The question was actually, do you start with your guys from year 12 or do you go younger?
Year 11 and 12, yes.
Yeah.
So we're focused, we do a 2-day program, so students come for 2 days to school, and then the other 3 days are actually around training and career pathways. So we're working really heavily with students about what they want to do when they leave school, and we start straight away. They still get their Year 12 certificates, so their QCE in Queensland, but their employment actually goes towards that, or courses, or whatever they want to do. We're working heavily with them on that.
Yeah, I start my guys about 14 to 15, and I work with a lot of kids with ASD.
Yeah.
And with the traineeships and the apprenticeships, just to get them so they've got a bit of an idea.
Yeah.
And by the time they finish year 12, they're actually got a step ahead of their other
Absolutely.
friends coming out at year 12.
Absolutely.
And I do Queensland and New South Wales as well. So I just wondered if you're the same, if you started young too.
I wish we started in year 9, because I think that's when we need the support.
Yeah, 14 is the age you can
Yeah.
actually start them,
Yeah.
but whether they want to do it or not. It's just when they disengage from school. I find a lot of kids around that age, at the end of year 9,
Yes.
are really disengaging. So, and in answer to Scott, is it? Sorry. There is things as well that we do, which is called work assist. If you actually have employees that have it, and we'll come in and support you and support the employee as well. So there are other things. It's not just a matter of getting them a job. It's a matter of and helping them get there and the modifications and that. It's also keeping them in the workplace, and it's for existing clients or staff you have as well. There's a thing called work assist. I do big on that as well. So, and I find that seems to work in the community. That's it. That's me.
Yeah, because I think there's a big thing about supporting people along their journey. I think that's huge, and that's really important. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking for a part-time job in Tweed Heads. I'm a local, so I was born in South Australia. I can live anywhere. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for sharing.
Hi. My question is really just about helping people with the interview process. So it's very difficult for some people, particularly when they experience social anxiety, and they get very overwhelmed very easily, and their ability to present in interviews. So I guess, I know there's training for them to prepare for interviews, but I'm wondering, in any setting, is there support to prepare the employer and to encourage the employer to look past poor interview presentation, and where might people with disabilities that have a lot of anxiety and really find it difficult in the interview process go to find help with that?
Okay, I might answer on some of that. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There is a lot of support there to assist the participant in gaining those interview skills, and that can be around doing identifying the industry they want to work in, doing a mock interview, practice, that kind of thing. So a lot of that happens, but on the other side, what you're talking about with the employers is we would talk to employers about maybe how they undertake an interview. So somebody with anxiety, for example, you don't want them going to an interview where they're sitting down and there's a panel in front of them. You might encourage the employer to, if they're going to have 2 or 3 people interviewing that person, you might encourage them to do it at a round table rather than an oblong table where there's that barrier. And around the questioning that they might ask, maybe just change the questions, how they're phrased, understand the language that they're using as well. Some language is not really appropriate these days, so educating them on language. Sorry, is it Steph? Yeah, sorry, what Steph was saying before about having that on the website about being an open and inclusive workplace. Just even talking to employers about what their website looks like. Is it accessible itself to people with disabilities? So our role is, in my role, for example, I'm talking to employers a lot about how they can become a more inclusive workplace. I've been with this organisation 16 years. It's a lot easier now than it was 16 years ago to have those conversations with employers. And I think what Scott was mentioning before, how he's having that awareness through his own lived experience with his children, that's something, conversations around disability are becoming a lot more open. There's a lot more information, television programs, Love on the Spectrum, Employable Me. It's becoming a much more open conversation than it was. I'm not saying it's perfect, there's still a long way to go, but it's getting better, and that awareness that employers might have just from having a family member as well makes a big difference. And just one point, at the beginning when you were saying that only 9% of people with a disability are employed, I think that might be just skewed a little bit, because I think when those surveys are done, people are reluctant to disclose as well. So I know that with, for example, Northern New South Wales Local Health District, about 7 years ago, were looking at how they could become a much more diverse and inclusive workplace, and they engaged the services of Job Access, who I mentioned before. And there was some roundtable talks and things like that, and they sent out a survey amongst their 7,500 staff. Do you identify as somebody that has disability? And 7,500 staff, 67 said yes. So, and that's within the health service. So you've got those people that don't want to disclose because they think it's a stigma and it's going to go against them. And there's the people that have that disability that they say, well, I might have a disability, but it's not impacting the way I do my job, so why do I need to put it on the form? We delivered some training once to one of the councils in the region around managing mental health in the workplace, and one of the senior managers who'd been there for 20 years disclosed for the first time that he lived with bipolar. Not one person in that place knew that, and everybody said they wouldn't have known because of how good he is at doing his job. So, yeah, it is a changing world out there.
I'd just like to ask you, Peter, too, the companies that you're dealing with for employment and that are open to employing people with disability, do they seem to be smaller or bigger, or is there a nice combo of both?
So either a combination of all of the above, everything, Scott, 5 employees. This sounds ridiculous, but we have to be careful if we're placing multiple clients into employment with a very small employer, because if you go over the 50% threshold, it becomes classified as an enclave, and therefore it's just almost like as if it was an ADE. So, so for everything from like self-employed, one person employing somebody else, to multinationals. So, for example, with the Busy Group, we have people in their contact corporate services, and they deal maybe with employers that have 500 plus, and they specifically manage those employers. I have employers that will phone me up and they'll say, "Oh, have you got anybody that's living with autism?" And it's not a business that does computers or IT or anything like that, which a lot of people think somebody on the spectrum, that's what they might be really good at. But they've identified a few staff that they've employed that are on the spectrum that just want to stay on task, attention to detail, Because of maybe some social anxiety, they don't engage too much and waste time chatting around the water cooler and things like that. So they've identified the benefits. I've got a lady who has a nursery, and she'll phone up and say, "Have you got any ladies with anxiety?" And that's the first time she said that, sorry, I've got to ask the question, why? And she said, well, first of all, I've got a nursery and we do maybe 300,000 cuttings a year, and ladies tend to be more dexterous and gentle with their hands, first of all. And because they have anxiety, they're sitting around together around a table, and they don't get involved in that idle gossip and chit-chat and and things like that. So, yeah, she identified the benefits there. So, yeah, there's lots of employers out there like that. But saying that, there's also those employers that we still need to educate.
Hi, I'm Mel. I just wanted to ask about job customisation. So if someone wants to get a job and they've got a disability and they may not be able to work full-time, or they may not be able to do some aspects of a typical job role, how have you been able to find it? Was it Paul?
Peter.
Peter. Have you been able to work with employers to look at job customisation so that a person can fit a position?
Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples. We had a young guy, he'd had injuries to his shoulders, made it difficult for him to lift heavy weights. He had a passion for bikes, and I mean push bikes, not motorbikes, but the push, whether it was a mountain bike or a race bike. He just had passions about bikes, so his goal eventually was to have his own bike shop. So we got him a position as a bike a trainee, like an apprenticeship, as a bike technician. But it became very evident very quickly that he was having difficulty just lifting the bikes up onto the bench. Even pumping up the tyres was really difficult for him. So we were able to bring in some workplace modifications. We had an OT doing assessments, things like that. And I think it was a cost of about $9,000 in the end. So we had a bench that could go up and down. We had a track system for the spare parts so that everything was at his level, just to pick and choose what he needed. And for pumping the tyres, we were able to get a medical compressor, and that alone was about $5,000 because it was a much quieter compressor than like your Chippy's tradie compressor. So, you know, someone out in the shop selling a $10,000 bike wasn't going to be drowned out by a compressor out the back. So, and the beauty about that is all that equipment remained the property of that customer. So if he went to another job, he would take that with him. The other example is of a guy that was a workshop in Lismore, metal fabrication. They wanted a welder. We had a young guy that was a fantastic welder. I didn't know how good he was until he'd actually started the job. But he lived with a mental health condition, and he found that the best way that he could manage that would be with meds. But the impact of the meds was he was pretty groggy first thing in the morning. So we were able to structure it in a way that he would actually start later than other guys at the workshop and then finish later. And the employer in the end was telling me that he was one of the best welders they've ever had, to the point that he actually used to initial all the jobs with the welding gun that he would do. So that workplace was fantastic in making an adjustment by changing the times that he could work, and also not just for the fact that he was a bit groggy in the morning from the meds, but it also meant he could work later in the afternoon, in the evening when there was no one else there, and he didn't have that pressure from other staff around. He just got on with the job himself.
Peter, a question for you. You've spoken about modifications in the workplace. Who pays for that? And what about insurance? Would an employer have to pay additional insurance? How does that work?
I'm going to defer on the insurance question. I'm not an industrial relations expert, but my gut feeling would say no, because it's just work cover insurance. And, you know, you've got employers that employ thousands of people. I'm sure it's not something that they have to address within that insurance, but that, like I say, I'm not 100% sure on that. As far as the workplace modifications, that is paid for by the federal government through the Job Access Program. So what would happen is that if it was through a DES provider, we would put in a submission for an application for an assessment to be undertaken. But if somebody's already been working in the workplace for quite a while, and then the employer's identified that there might be needs like, I'm sorry, I didn't know your name, they could use the work assist, and that means, so work assist basically is for if somebody is at risk of losing their job due to their health condition impacting on the way they do the job, work assist can come in and help, and there might be a way of also utilising that workplace modification program through that as well. But if you don't even want to engage someone with work assist, an employer can go directly to Job Access and put in a submission to have someone come out and do an assessment.
Thank you.
Actually, I can actually probably help with the question about insurances, because it's one of my many things I do in my role. So we have two covers of insurance in Surf Life Saving, one for our volunteers and one for our employees, our professional employees. So we actually don't have to disclose the medical nature of any of them. All we have to disclose is numbers, really. And it doesn't affect, it won't affect your premiums whatsoever. It's just the amount of employees. And also to the equipment, similarly with our insurers, we have to declare the equipment that we own, and that's an asset, and that's just included in our normal insurance packages.
Sorry, I just had to ask this question, but Tyler, I'm really excited about your future as you leave school and head out into the big wide world, I guess. My question actually was to all the panellists. If you could give Tyler one tip or one worldly piece of wisdom as he sets out on that journey, what would it be?
Be honest, I reckon. Be honest. Be confident. And just have a crack, mate. That's all there is to it.
I think my tip would be take any and every learning opportunity that's given to you, no matter what. And of course, I'm biased towards Surf Life Saving. When I first joined there as a volunteer, any workshop that came up, any course that came up, anything that was made available to me, no matter what, I did that just to build my own resume. So that would be my tip.
Mine would be follow your passion and believe in yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, you stole one. I was going to say believe in yourself, and also don't be afraid to reach out and ask for assistance.
And I'm really biased, so I'm going to say keep being amazing and, keep doing your best.
I'd say the same, just have fun. You sound like you've got everything ahead of you and it's so exciting to see, so have fun with it.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for coming, especially to everyone on the panel for sharing so openly. I hope you've seen the possibilities and that you can come away with some actionable steps to make a more inclusive world for young people with disability. I personally feel really excited and hopeful for the future of my daughter, so thank you so much for giving me that. We're going to finish with another in the Fearless Film series, and there'll also be time to network before we leave. So let's, all the panellists can pop down, and then we'll put on another Fearless film.
My name is Ellem, and I'm the owner of Master Shredder. My business specialty is the destruction of confidential documents. With over 50 clients and 5 years experience, I do my job well. As you might have figured out, I have Down syndrome. This seems to play at the forefront of many people's minds before they get to know me.
She's very good at reading people. We would walk into a situation and, you can feel the people like, oh, what's she doing here? And so, of course, then Emma would feel that and react to that. I did make an approach to employment providers and I was told, Mrs. Lynham, your daughter's not going to be able to work. You need to accept that. To backtrack a little bit, when she was in high school, they sometimes would take the year 12s to the office to do work experience, or shredding was the only part that Emma liked. And so I'm sitting in meditation and I can see her at school shredding. Then I realised, oh my goodness, that's it. I initially sent out hundreds of letters to all kinds of businesses talking about Emma and how she could shred their confidential documents. Nobody got back to me. So then I looked at, well, who does have a need for a confidential service? So I approached a legal firm. They agreed to give her a go. They opened the door for her with another legal firm. Then she got a financial institution, by which time she had trashed 5 of those small shredders. So we then had to look at investing in something a bit more durable, which turned out to be a big commercial shredder.
Emma is drastically different to the other shredding companies in Townsville. She is entirely on-site, entirely confidential, and she can't read. So the best you'll get is Emma going, oh my God, that's a gorgeous photo, and then shredding it.
Her offer as a business model is so unique. It's exactly what we needed. We tried looking for other businesses for a couple of years before we decided, but it just wasn't ticking the boxes and we didn't feel comfortable that the confidentiality wasn't ensured because it was taken off site. And with Emma's non-verbal, non-reading, in brackets, disability, we actually saw as an ability.
You take the bags, yeah. And where do you put them? You take the bag to the avocado trees.
Well, sustainability is, for us is important. The shredded paper helps with weed control, so we're not using as much pesticide, and also helps with water retention in under the trees. It's just excellent mulch.
She's one of the most dedicated people I've ever met. When she gets to work, she will not stop. And there's some days where she'll overfill her shredder because she's working that hard.
She's probably the hardest working person in this office. She comes in here, gets her job done, walks away. She never complains, and she does probably something that's really, really important for our business, which is protecting the privacy of our clients day in, day out.
The peace of mind of working with someone who has an amazing work ethic has been really beneficial.
She's definitely dedicated to shredding paper, there's no doubt about that.
If she's sick of waiting for us, she'll just move that shredder out of the way herself.
The name of the business is an interesting little story. Every now and then I was throwing ideas at her and she would just look at me, roll her eyes and go, oh, Mummy, no. And then one day she had been watching Ninja Turtles and I said to her, what do you think about Master Shredder?
Me? Yeah.
That's me.
That's you, the Master Shredder. Seeing Emma in the community and not needing my help is very rewarding in a world where she is kind of directed to not make choices and not given the capacity or the option to even learn to make those choices. These days, she's learning more and more how to do things without our help. She's expressed that she wants to learn how to drive so she can do that aspect of work herself as well.
Yes, there are a lot of challenges, but they're not insurmountable. Nothing is.
Communicating with someone with a disability, especially someone who's non-verbal, can be perceived as difficult. We've learnt to be able to communicate effectively with her. It's not Auslan, it's Emma. We talk Emma.
Emma being employed has been transformational. That's afforded her a huge confidence. She was willing and confident enough to explore the concept of what life might look like if I moved out. And for the first year when she moved out, did she party, just as any young person does.
She's opened my horizons with all of that because I'm not the type of person who finishes work and goes out, but she gets me out and she enjoys it. She makes me enjoy it.
Because I work, I am able to do what I enjoy most. And I am able to pay off my own mortgage.
Your home? Oh. Yeah, you like your home, yeah.
As a parent, to see my daughter soar is just, it is so gratifying. And so I look where she is now with her own business, moved out into her own property that she is paying off. They are amazing achievements for any young person.
I suppose we love Emma because she doesn't let her disability stand in the way of what she wants to achieve, and that's to be an independent businesswoman.
If there's one thing that I could say to another mum who might be feeling the way I felt when Emma was coming up to the end of school, just for a moment, go back to when you were pregnant. What was the dream that you had? Don't focus on the disability, focus on the unique and amazing young person in front of you and drive that forward.
It's been amazing watching Emma's growth, to see her confidence grow, her independence. It's been so useful for us to have someone who's so competent at what they do come in and work for us.
As long as I'm in real estate, for however many years ahead, Emma's always got a position with us.
The paper has been a huge benefit to us.
Oh yeah, if anyone needs document shredding, call Master Shredder. It's awesome. It really is.
The opportunity to work not only provides me the capacity to support myself, but it also strips away the labels that people place on me. I am not a burden. I am not simple, difficult, or a child. I am Emma Ellem, the boss and owner of Master Shredder.
Thank you.